On a somewhat rainy Thursday night. We're excited to have our 8th community forum, but our first community forum where we're actually moving forward with the project. The vote's over, community has spoken and given us incredible support, and now we can really, thank you, applause. And now we can really get down to business and see what the next few years will look like as we put together just an incredible asset for the community of East Long Meadow, the new East Long Meadow High School, and the grounds and the full campus. And
Or is it the kitchen in the other room?
with that said, I'm going to switch to the next slide. As you can see, these are the members of our school building committee. They're not all present tonight, but I will ask the ones who are here to stand up just for a moment so they can be recognized. Anybody on the school building committee, please stand up. We have a round of applause. They've done a lot of work getting us here. And they still have a lot of work to do. And then we have members of our design team from Jones Whitsitt and SMMA. Owner project manager, Skanska. And the newest member of the team and the folks who will probably be doing the majority of the presentation tonight, Fontaine Brothers, who are construction managers at risk. So we have the whole team together. We're excited to get going and start to really show the community where this project's going to go. So without further ado, I think I'm handing off to Mr. Murphy.
Thank you, Gordon. I'm Ben Murphy with Skanska, the owner's project manager. We do have some exciting design and construction planning updates to share with you folks tonight, but we thought it would be helpful to first start off with just an overall summary of where we are at in the project, the processes therein. So going back to the schematic design phase, at the conclusion of the successful schematic design phase, as well as the town vote and approval of the project, our team entered what's called the detailed design phase, and it's in that phase, it's a significant milestone from a financial standpoint for the town, because that's when they entered into the project funding agreement with the Mass School Building Authority. And ultimately what that did was it allowed the town to resume applications with the help of our project team here, resume applications for reimbursement from the state, because previously the town was under a feasibility study agreement, which the funding and the reimbursement was specific to the feasibility study. So upon that completion, we go on a brief hiatus, but now we're back rolling with that, and the process has been seamless, so good to have that turned back on. And just overall, the detailed design process is similar to previous processes, where we're checking in with the state at different checkpoints. As you can see, all the flowing boxes below the blue arrow there. So we just submitted the DD, which is Design Development Package, to the Mass School Building Authority 2 weeks ago. So similar to past submissions, we submit the construction documents and all of the MSBA requirements to them. They review that, and then they compile all of their comments and submit them to our project team. We'll take those under advisement and either work to build their insight into the project itself or clear up anything that needs to be clarified. So that's great. And also at this point, there's more roles that are being filled on the project. As Gordon noted, we do have the construction manager, who is Fontaine, who was selected by the school building committee in January. We also have the commissioning agent, who is assigned by the Mass School Building Authority. Commissioning agent is ultimately tasked with taking a look at the project from a mechanical, electrical, plumbing standpoint, as well as the building envelope. So during this phase, they're reviewing the documents, as the rest of the project team is, and they're offering their insight, their professional input on the project regarding the MEP systems, the building enclosure. And likewise, we'll take their information and just kind of build it into the document. So as we are progressing further and further, the scope's becoming more defined. We're getting more eyeballs on the project, and we're building out towards the 100% construction documents, which we are anticipating being ready in December of this year. And Fontaine, since they were brought onto the team through a process and methodology called Construction Manager at Risk, which the school building committee approved. They were able to get involved and join the project team ahead of the full construction documents being completed, which has ultimately allowed their team to start planning some early packages. You can see some in the purple up above. Right now the big focus is the enabling work. So they're taking a look at anything that they can get done. As soon as the kids are out of school, as soon as there's a recess, they're going to get in there and start to do some utility relocations, some earthwork, some erosion control, things of that nature, anything they can do to prep for the rest of the project. You can see from there we go into the foundations in the fall of 2024, and then steel erection and so on and so forth thereafter. So you can see how each one of these is important and how they stack up and bring us to the end goal here, which is the move-in date in the summer of 2026. And so if there's any questions on the schedule or just the process in general, I'm happy to answer them now. Otherwise, I'm going to hand it off to Dora.
Hi, my name is Dory Brooks. I'm principal of Jones Whitson Architects, one of a very large team of architects and engineers who are involved in designing the school. And I see a lot of faces who haven't been at previous meetings, so I wanted to just cover some of the things that you may not know that are part of the project, some of the reasons why the project ultimately is happening. So I know it's hard right now because we're about to enter that very difficult phase where the existing school is most heavily impacted by the proposed construction, and that certainly can be challenging. At the end of it all, the advantage of a new school is that you'll actually have a healthy indoor environmental quality and learning environment for students with an entirely new air handling systems, air conditioning in every classroom and throughout the school, addressing sort of replacement of all the piping and water systems in the school. Everything will be brand new. So that's a huge accomplishment. Really will change the environment in ways that I swear no one really understands until they walk into a new school and they realize how it transforms the entire experience of going to school. So that's coming ahead of you eventually. This school that we're building is going to meet the current Massachusetts stretch code, which are the most stringent energy codes pretty much around the country, next to California perhaps. So a much more energy-saving building and achieving requirements that have only been actually out across the state for the last year. So the effort to put that together, to create a building that is well-insulated, that includes photovoltaic arrays on the roof to gather solar energy, a lot of new systems throughout the building, all of which are all electric now to eliminate use of natural gas in the building entirely. All of these are part of the complex design process that we're in currently, and will again put you into a very forward position with your new school. That PV array will help to offset the cost of the project, and that is already a part of the project. We also will have already designed the classrooms such that we're trying to maximize the quality of the daylighting in all teaching spaces so that students and teachers have access to good classroom lighting, so that you can actually reduce your use of artificial lighting, but also because we know that physically it actually helps students to learn to have high quality air, good natural light, good ventilation, access to the outdoors, a green campus. All of those things are kind of part of the process. We also are excited that you will have a new gymnasium, a new auditorium, an auditorium that is sized to support your school, but is actually designed to support all of the things that you want to do in an auditorium. So drama, projection of video, amazing orchestra performances and band performances. So it'll be an entirely new acoustically designed space that will really support the community beyond just the high school's use. Additionally, all the furniture, fixtures, and equipment in the school will be new. So new teaching technologies, new furniture, new labs, science labs, amazingly, all new equipment there. So it's a complete process and complete project. And then, of course, what's changed so much through the last 30 years is that we've come to understand the diverse needs of different learners and the needs for students to learn in different ways. So the school actually provides different types of intervention spaces near to the classroom to support students to get the services they need to be able to stay with their peers, and no matter what specific strengths or weaknesses they have, or they'll be able to be supported completely on their own individualized pathways to achieve success throughout the time that they're in school. So these are things to keep in mind as you're kind of feeling the frustrations of a new school construction process. So I just want to remind you of those. So I'm going to pass it off to Jill, who's going to walk you through the design for those of you who have not seen the details.
Hi, I'm Jill DeCourcy. I'm an architect with Jones Whitsett Architects, and I get the fun job of walking through the proposed design tonight. For those of you who've been to these before, we've made some modifications, but it's going to be pretty familiar, but I do see a lot of new faces, so we will go through the proposed design. This is the site plan, so you can see the new high school right in the center. If you see this dashed brown line here, that's the existing high school footprint now. So the new high school is going to be built outside of the footprint of the existing school. That's going to allow for construction with the existing school building in use, and that will be discussed in a lot more detail later on in this presentation, but just to give you a sense of how the site is laying out. So with that existing building remaining during construction, and then the existing turf field is going to remain the same as it is today. That left us with kind of an interesting swatch of land to work with. So that influences where the school is laying out. You're seeing a new circulation pattern off of Maple Street. You're going to have improved flow of traffic and good pedestrian separation. It's going to be a lot safer for people coming into the site. The Norden Street access is stopped at this point, so that road doesn't continue onto the site. That's one of the big changes on the site design. And then you'll see this layout of playing fields. We end up with this nice big expanse of playing fields. And this is the final configuration. This is one thing that has developed a little bit since this was last presented in SD. We've really been focusing in on making sure we've optimized the layout of those fields to best take advantage of the space that's available. One thing to note is we are adding 2 softball fields to the site, so that's a big benefit with the new design. There's going to be a lot of great outdoor spaces with the high school. There's going to be outdoor classroom spaces, a dining plaza, a lot of great opportunities to engage with nature. Here are some exterior views of the building, starting with this one, which is the main approach to the front door. You'll see there's a very prominent entryway with a lot of glass and a big canopy overhang, so it should be a very welcoming sort of environment, a welcoming entry point into the school. It's largely brick with kind of natural colors, so it should be warm and inviting. And again, you can see this emphasis on good pedestrian walkways, a good emphasis on safety for people walking around on the site. Sure, yeah. So down here, this is the pool building. So we have the high school building and then the pool. The pool is technically a separate project from the high school, but they're both being built at the same time. So you'll have the main high school approach, and then off to the side is the pool building. Okay, so these are the floor plans. The basic concept is that you have 4 wings organized around a central spine. Arts wing, athletics wing are towards the north-facing Maple. Those are your more public-facing spaces, so it's a good orientation. And then the academic wings to the south are going to be facing the wooded area and the playing fields beyond. That's a 2-story area with the media center in the central area at the 2nd story. So taking advantage of that more quiet, natural side of the site. Since SD, when we last showed this plan, we've made a lot of development in some of the details. We haven't made any big plan changes since then, but we have spent a lot of time developing things like the auditorium and getting everything coordinated there so it's a really functional space. We've worked on the kitchen and the custodial spaces a lot and gotten those fine-tuned. And then some of the Voc programming, the hands-on studios, so we have culinary, we have graphics, video, a STEM classroom, a STEM robotics lab. So those are centrally located in the plan, and those are something that we've been working on a lot lately, getting them developed. This is the pool building, so you can see how that works on the site. You have your high school building in white, and then the yellow is the pool. We'll have nice proximity to the other athletic fields on that side and some separate parking available for the pool use. And then you can see it's a 6-lane pool with its own locker rooms and office space supporting it. And then here we have some renderings of the inside of the building. So to give you a sense of what's happening inside, here's that auditorium that we've been working on. So we've been looking a lot at the acoustics, which areas need to reflect sound, which need to absorb sound, making that really functional. Starting to look at finishes to get that atmosphere in the space, and things like, you know, designing catwalks and the lighting and everything to make it a really functional auditorium space. On the right, you can see some additional views. These top two are in that central spine area. So when you first walk in and you have the auditorium off to your right, you can see we've got a lot of natural wood materials in there with some accent tones. So it's supposed to be kind of a very comfortable space to be in, a lot of natural light. And then this would be part of the cafeteria. The cafeteria has two main zones, one with a lower ceiling, which feels a little bit more like cafe dining, more like being in a Starbucks or something with the wood ceiling, and then opening up to a multi-story, very light-filled space. So you'd have some different settings for eating. And then you have a rendering of the pool at the lower right. And I'll turn it over to Fontaine.
Thank you. Good evening, everyone. My name is Dave Fontaine, Jr. I'm the CEO of Fontaine Brothers. We are a locally based construction company based out of Springfield, also with offices in Worcester. Been based in Springfield for over 90 years, and actually myself and my father own the company, both born and raised in East Long Meadow. So really excited to be part of this. We work across the state, building primarily schools. We've done a lot of work together with JWA and Skanska, the consultants that are involved here, and also built a lot of the local schools that you'd be familiar with: West Springfield High School, Minnechaug, East Hampton High School, Chicopee Com, mostly all the large high school projects in the area. Really excited to be a part of this project. It's very important to us as a company, to me personally, to our family, so we're going to do everything that we can to make it successful. Want to introduce our core team that you'll be seeing throughout the project, along with myself. Really experienced Fontaine team. Jamie Bloom, who's our senior project manager, lives right in Wilbraham, has been with us about a dozen years in the construction industry, about 20 now. We've done a lot of great big projects together, and Mark Hogan, our lead superintendent, East Long Meadow resident himself, a taxpayer, will be watching the dollars closely, and really involved in the community as well. Jamie and Mark are currently building Doherty High School in Worcester, which is a project school that's actually even larger than East Long Meadow, and before that built Worcester South High School as well. So really experienced team from Fontaine, and really engaged in the details as local folks and town residents. So I'm going to turn it over to Jamie and Mark, who are going to talk about the phasing, logistics, and schedule, the way we're going to approach the project construction-wise.
Thanks, Dave. Here's just some of the projects Dave was talking about. Myself and Mark probably worked on most of these. Sorry, I usually talk really loud, so I'm not very good with microphones. So yeah, this is just kind of a sample of some of the jobs we've done around here. And like Dave said, we're really excited to be involved in this project. Next slide. Next slide. So this is basically kind of our initial logistics plan. It's probably at about 80% right now. We're trying to nail it down to get things started this summer. The big changes you kind of see is the horseshoe up front is essentially going to turn into a parking lot. We're going to need that as work progresses throughout the job. So that area becomes a parking lot, and then where that number 2 is, becomes a separate construction entrance. The key to this whole phase, and kind of every school we work on, is really us getting separated from the school's day-to-day activities, because we don't want to be in the way, and we also don't want all of our construction traffic impeding, school buses, all that stuff. So this kind of setup helps us alleviate that congestion at the front of the building. We're still working with Frank and his team on how we do deliveries, how we get the trash out of the building, because the corner of the new building is probably about 20 feet from the back of that wall, so it's not very far away. So it's going to be a pretty complicated kind of phasing plan as we go through it. A couple other items. You can kind of see as the road comes around, there's a crosswalk right there. We couldn't avoid it, so we're looking at how the students are going to be able to get back and forth from the school to the site. We're going to have some traffic gates there to basically keep traffic stopped. So anytime there's pedestrians, that basically they'll have to actuate something to pass through so that pedestrians can get back and forth to the field safely. And then the area up top, where the number 3 is, essentially, that's going to be kind of an additional gate, sort of like an emergency gate. Norton Street will not be used for construction activities. It'll still be used for deliveries like it is now, but all of the construction traffic is going to be coming in kind of where that number 2 is, down around into the job site that way. So this is kind of as work progresses, once we get separated from the school, we'll essentially start digging for all of our foundations, which this kind of shows. As that goes on, at that point you can see the front parking area is in line. The bus loop is going to operate the same as it does now. The general kind of traffic flow of the site will be the same as it is now, just that additional parking area. And then, you can go to the next slide. Moving to the spring, the foundations are going to go on, and then steel's going to start in the probably December timeframe, Mark? And then as soon as steel starts going up, we start enclosing the building, which is what you see here, kind of what you'll see in the springtime. As the building gets enclosed, we'll start the work on the inside, mechanical, electrical, plumbing, and then we'll start sheetrock and all that stuff. Don't want to go too into the weeds on that, so the next slide. Then the summer of '25, you can see inside, we'll keep working on the building itself, but we're going to come outside of the fence for a bit, trying to get the permanent parking for that half of the site, as well as the permanent tennis courts up and running, and then also the new concessions building and the work at the press box. Essentially everything that's kind of at the stadium and the existing student parking, all that work is going to go on in the summer of '25. Slide. Then the summer of '26, we kind of retreat the other way. We'll be moving all the new furniture, anything existing from this school, into the new building, all while tearing down this building as fast as humanly possible so we can get the bus loop in. So come the first day of school, which is the next slide, essentially you're going to look close to this. So again, our focus is the final traffic flow being in place. We're trying to do as few kind of temporary traffic measures as we can, just because that gets chaotic. And this sort of shows that, the end state of the building and all the way the traffic's designed to flow should be in place come the first day of school. We'll be inside on all the fields, still tearing down the old building, probably into the early winter. And the next slide. Brings us to the final completion in the summer of '27, which is essentially what, this rendering is a little old. The new drawings were more what Dory showed earlier with the field layout, but that's kind of the phasing and schedule in a nutshell there.
No, you good? No, not at all. That's it.
Hey, good evening, guys. Michael Myers, been town resident forever and represented 51.
Do you mind going so I can pick you up on the camera?
Sure.
On that microphone? Sure.
Yeah, so Michael Myers, I'm representing the 51 varsity tennis players. I've been a tennis player for here in town myself. I've spent, maybe 20,000 hours on the tennis courts over the last many years. So I'm representing the players tonight and maybe the families in town and our rec programs that will all kind of be affected for quite a long number of months. And so I think we have maybe most of our audience tonight, not everyone, but we wanted to talk to see how the tennis courts, which are going to be the most remote piece of the whole property, how they could be built much, much sooner and maybe not affect hundreds and hundreds of town residents and our varsity teams from being bussed all over the area and having to lose their continuity of having great seasons. And our largest turnout of athletes in many, many years are here playing and would love to keep that energy going for families and town members, et cetera. So can you discuss the tennis project in terms of how we can maybe work on that?
Yeah, so big picture, that was something we were trying to focus on. So the way this plan is kind of broken up, the actual high school program only has one season that they won't have all the courts. So they have this course this year. This summer they'll lose 3 of them, which I know impacts their ability to basically host anything here. But the fall, so the spring of 25. So spring of 25, they wouldn't have the courts, but then come spring of 26, the new courts will be online for them to use. So while the whole project is, a 3-year window, the actual time of the team not being able to use the courts here is only going to be 1 season. That's sort of how this is.
Jamie, can you just touch on why the 3 courts have to go and why the new courts can't be built until you plan on building?
So the 3 courts that are basically not shown here anymore, they're actually even closer to where the pool building is. So to put any of those foundations in, there's just no way to keep those online. So that's why those are going to get kind of encompassed into the site this summer. The new courts we really can't do this summer because a lot of the final utilities and everything for the new buildings all comes through there, and that's not completely designed yet. So we can't really get into that area, put it all together, get all the utilities we need moved. I mean, it's already April. So we looked at that and just everything going on over there, and it takes away a good portion of that parking lot. If you go back to the next slide, it really hacks into that parking lot, and then it forces us to do some of the work in the state. A lot of things splay off of that, looking at the picture.
Yeah, the question was, I think, is there a copy of the utilities? And
I don't have it. I have a paper copy.
you can pass it back. In the area that's there now, there's also overhead lines. When you think the parking lot, the existing parking lot sits in the footprint of the future tennis courts. So just from a broader perspective, when we look at school projects, right, obviously over the course of the project, a lot of things are going to get disrupted, parking, different fields, courts, and stuff like that. So in some of the original phasing plans, we actually would have lost the 6 courts up front, and we're structuring the fence line around it to preserve the 3. And also, we're doing half the parking lot in the summer of 2025 into the final configuration instead of the summer of 2026 to move the construction along as much as possible. So from a pure construction and logistics standpoint, I think that, with the configuration and design as things are, we're limiting the downtime as much as we can, and we're also replacing the courts as quickly as we can, because it's something that, on all the school projects we're trying to do. I think that beyond what we're in control of kind of construction-wise, working on implementing the final program, there's things that Fontaine can do to adjust it and obviously make it as accommodating as possible. And that's what we're trying to work into the plan. I think that beyond that, I know the town is working on other, kind of plans and accommodations, and that's beyond obviously what we can speak to within the scope of the construction site. So I think I'd let Gordon or others kind of comment on that.
Thank you. So we've started preliminary discussions because it's actually going to be more than just tennis that gets impacted. It's going to be most of our sports as you go through each year. You see all these fields go offline once we move into the new building. So Mr. McGee, Mr. Page, me, Mr. Christensen, we're going to be very busy working with our neighbors to figure out how we coordinate a number of sports. Mr. McGee has already started those discussions with both Hampton-Wilbraham School District and Long Meadow School District just to start to figure out how we might be able to all cooperate depending on which year we're in during the project. We have nothing finalized in terms of what exactly that looks like, but we are in discussion. And I do want to say that just as Dave was saying, Fontaine has been exceptional as we've discussed this throughout because the initial entrance, I think we lost all 6 courts almost immediately. So they're doing everything that they possibly can to try to keep things online for as long as humanly possible, but we also don't want to be doing things twice. So in some cases, in order to keep certain things online, they would actually have to do something and then take it off and do it again. And then that obviously starts to increase your budget incredibly. Sure.
You want to take the microphone? Okay, but then they can't get there, okay.
So if the complete set of documents is not complete, and we're truly in the design phase still, I know you have a magic wand.
I have a magic wand?
You do.
Okay.
These are your students, and these kids have supported you. They've sat through the absolute worst conditions in this building, and they know what it's like to live in that. And they supported the new school. They went on floats. They did videos, and you can see them here tonight. And they voted for the new pool that we're funding, and that new pool is going right through their kids. So I'm asking you and the school building committee, Mr. Crucial, Chair, to look at these kids tonight and to support them. And I know it's going to be pennies on the dollar relative to moving a couple things. And again, the utilities aren't in. Construction documents aren't finished. Let's support these guys and do it for them. Thank you.
Listen, we really understand. I'm Greg Thompson. I'm the school committee chair, also a member of the building committee. Recognize, as Mr. Smith said, many of the fields are going offline for a certain amount of time. All of the sports will be without fields for a certain amount of time. It's part of the building process. What? Michelle, this is how the process has to go. We've heard from the builders. You want to talk?
What do you want to know? You gave me the mic. I'm asking you to support the kids.
Michelle, we support all these kids. You know that.
I know that. And
Say that
these kids are the only kids that don't have a field in East Long Meadow. What's the transportation going to cost? Do we know what transportation is going to cost?
We haven't gotten that far.
Because we need to give these kids transportation, because some of these kids, and I have letters from others who wanted me to read it in tonight, but I won't. They can't play if we don't provide them transportation. And there are other fields for like baseball, the center field. I'm just asking, can't we do something to make this happen for these kids? And I know Fontaine is some of the best around, so can we come up with a design that works for, and I know everybody has to make concessions, but like I said, these kids in this building now have made a lot of concessions, and it's only going to get worse, and they're going to keep living through a project that's going to really truly disrupt, their experience here. So can we do something to make it, to make it better?
David, I think the big question is can your team explain that most eastern section of the property where the tennis courts are going, how that would happen, that would be impacted by the big picture with underground and conduits and all those things, why that area is really going to be affected, or whether something could be adjusted at the very end of the project. But that's the most remote part of the property. It doesn't make sense that, no one doesn't understand how it doesn't make sense to put courts on a remote section of that property, which not much is actually going to be touched other than tennis courts.
Yeah, no, I totally understand looking at this, the kind of flyover view and what it is now and what it becomes, that when we flip the slide, right, it's easy, we take that area. And this document that we've got is basically, and we can pass it around or provide it later, but there's underground there. There's existing utilities that serve the drainage for the existing parking lot, right? And those in the transformation from the existing parking lot to the final get removed and get replaced with drainage for the new parking lot. But in order to, if we were to, take that offline, remove it, which you would if it was going under the tennis court, that would need to be replicated somewhere, probably within the existing parking lot. There's also overhead power lines when you go out there that are in the footprint of the proposed tennis court. So in the scope of the project, which in its entirety has got to be completed in the next, 2 years and a couple months, plus or minus, we're already moving at, rapid pace with design and engineering and National Grid and all that stuff to get that stuff moved when it's going to need to be for construction utilities. In order to, excavate for the pool building, as you see, we can't keep those online just kind of with excavation and safety and stuff like that. So given that those need to come offline in the next several months as we start, real pool construction over the summer and into the fall, right? The idea of being able to replicate those courts over there by, say, springtime of next year, what you need to do engineering, design-wise, utility-wise, and construction of the new courts and surfacing of the temperature and stuff like that just isn't feasible to happen in that time frame. So that's why knowing it was a priority, right, rather than waiting, traditionally if this wasn't a priority or wasn't something you were thinking of outside of the normal construction sequence, that entire parking lot that you see getting redesigned would happen probably in the summer of '26. And those courts outside of pushing them wouldn't be online until probably 2027 if you just treated it as, the normal course of construction. So that's why we made it a specific subphase in our kind of proposal to go and do those a year earlier than would be traditionally towards the end of the project. But that's where that one season, right, becomes the impacted part. So construction and engineering wise, unfortunately with the utilities, power companies and stuff like that, it's just not possible to get it completed in that time frame.
And you guys are doing paving out front here to make a new temporary parking area straight ahead of us, right? Is that it?
Yeah, in the area that's currently the horseshoe area there.
And so what area is there? How much space is that? How much are you utilizing space there in terms of temporary, if you're putting in temporary courts in there, how would that work if you had temporary courts up near the horseshoe?
Yeah, that's a question from just the pure, we're the builders obviously, but not designers or engineers or owners that would, influence that, if it was going to become additional scope as part of the interim part of the project. I wouldn't be the person to answer that part. But I know that in terms of the reason that we're paving that to be temporary parking is because over the course of the project, about half of that parking will be lost and flipped over. So it's like swing space for parking, utilizing the existing space there.
That whole area is going to be paved, that whole area. Say parking out back.
In the first phase of enabling, they're going to close off that Norton Street entrance, so there will be no parking behind the building. So all that parking goes up to the front of the building, which is another reason why they're taking the horseshoe and adding parking spaces there.
But that front area is an area that possibly has a conversation in terms of what square footage you're using and what square footage maybe is not being used if there's a number of parking spots that have to be there. So that is your area that would be sort of asphalt and a rectangle, which would be similar to a tennis court if we were on the very edge of that.
Sure. I think we need the space though is the issue, right? For parking, we're taking
Just for
another lot.
parking, I'll take it real quick. Just for the part that we're talking about here, we're going to disrupt this a lot, right? In all the 3 summers, sorry. to disrupt us a lot in the last 3 summers. So the reason we're talking about this parking space is so we're not constantly moving people back and forth. The slope here, we'd have to build it up straight to make a level 4 court. There's water in here, there's asbestos water, there's trees in the way. By taking the parking away from here and on the other side, we need to have some place where they could just, like Frank's team could just be here for the next 3 years, is what our price is there, why we're doing that. And like David said before, the depth of the footing of the pool makes it very hard to keep these other ones here. Originally, these were all gone. And when we see me being a town resident, I know how much they're used, believe me. It takes me to heart that I understand, being a coach for 19 years in this town, I understand the youth and how this all works in this town, excuse me. So, with the passion that I have with the sports too, also, we try desperately to keep these courts and online. We understand that, the kids will be disrupted. Like I said, all these kids here for 2 years to be disrupted once we build them, and then they have to wait another year to reuse the fields. So it's not that we haven't thought about this internally for a long time, about how we try to make this work for a little bit better for everybody in town.
I have a question about that. We've thought about that for a long time.
Since we've been on board, since we've been on board and the design started, that's when we first start the drawings, how do we make this work for the town? That's how that
I'm
works.
Fred Kelly, was assistant coach for a fantastic girls varsity team, working their tails off. I'm interested in 2 things. One, what is the plan, given that we now know that we're going to lose 3 of those courts? So we're going to lose 3 of those courts. We need 6 in order for the boys and girls teams to play. What's the plan for the other 3 courts? That's my first question. And the second question would be, in the design of this, is there any other consideration to put those tennis courts someplace permanent that wouldn't be impacted and cause a delay in over 1.5 years from the time the kids, those 3 courts are taken, till the spring of 2025 when they get used to it?
Or you know the second one?
You know, Frank, the first one?
Yeah, those courts would be used for, longer than that.
So I can answer the first one, I can't answer the design question. But the first question you said, what is the plan? So we're developing that plan right now. We have started discussions both with the Hampton-Wilbraham School District and the Long Meadow School District. We've also spoken to Springfield around Forest Park courts, and so we're looking at a number of possibilities for partnership and collaboration, which we'll also have to do for our swimmers and our swim team. And most likely we're going to, once the fields to the side of the school go offline, we're going to have to do that with other teams as well. Most likely junior varsity will be looking for places to practice.
So there'll be a cost associated with that, right?
Correct.
Do we understand what that data is? Do we have the data and what the cost is?
We don't have the cost yet. That's what we're working on right now.
So would it be reasonable to consider that maybe those costs might outweigh consideration to do something with the conduits, power lines, etc.? Is that a possibility?
Okay.
Just to respond to that, one of the real challenges of a project like this is that you have to keep the school functional and operational while all this work is going on. So all of those utilities that are serving the school have to be protected until those summer months when you can disconnect because you won't disrupt school. So that's part of the problem. It's what's underground and overhead that has to be protected while those swings happen are very, very challenging. In terms of why, the layout ends up being what it is, if you watch the project at all through the year of schematic design, you'll have seen that we went through many, many iterations of this site plan. And we just have a lot of different constraints to work with in terms of where the position of the building. So the goal was to keep the building on site, to create as much of this recreational field. We've relayed the field probably 17 times trying to get optimized performance and size. A lot of it was about bringing back softball so that from an equity standpoint, you didn't have baseball get 2 fields here and not softball. So that definitely pinches our recreational space decision making, and kind of you can see already looking at this plan. The other is, believe me, as design team, we pushed a lot on parking and said, do we really need this much parking? And we've studied and studied and studied the parking, and there have been as many people pushing back on parking and concerned about that as there have been about tennis. So every decision has been vetted through a pretty extensive process. This inconvenience is, I know, horrible, but it is temporary in that there will be 6 courts when we're done, and this is ultimately the position. The cost issue, I just want to say that yes, there it sounds like there's going to have to be some consideration about the inconvenience. But the cost of delaying the pool building construction, even if that were possible, and I don't think it is because of the utilities that need to be put in place, is considerably greater than the cost of, of what you're talking about in terms of the cost on the program for one season.
I wasn't asking to delay
Yeah.
the pool, I'm just wondering, is there any other option to
Yeah.
work around that section of the property that the Fontaine folks spoke to with regards to what I thought I heard was conduit for drainage and power lines, and that's the two obstacles?
Yeah, so there's power, there's drainage, and I believe there's also sewer.
Is the question, is there another place on the campus? Is that what you're
I'm
asking?
wondering if, is the long pole in the tent, long pole in the tent is we need 6 floors, right? That's the long pole in the tent. This is a very complex project. I came from Wilbraham, I moved into Saw Meadow 3 or 4 years ago. I've been through the high school. It's a great thing. It's a great thing that this town is doing. Fontaine's a great builder. We're just trying to look at any other possible options that we can consider. It's a big, complex problem. So the collaboration is what we're going to need. And I'm just wondering, can we collaborate on alternatives that might allow us to keep what we haven't thought about yet? The data is going to be what the cost is, okay? So let's just consider all those options and then make an informed decision.
Yeah, again, from the building perspective, totally understood, and I think that what we wanted to communicate is that we have been, from the building perspective, thinking, how can we keep those 3 online? How can we accelerate the construction of the 6 and make all those accommodations with the constraint of the utilities in that area, right? And also the design and the procurement of the work that's associated with completing that scope. They're from a pure construction standpoint, right? And this is all that, we can speak to. We've been thinking of it as a top priority since we were engaged in what we're presenting as far as that alternative from a construction, utilities, procurement, material, lead times, moving those things, all that you need to do. That's the most accommodating from a construction with the current design that we can come up with all the, Mark's 35 years, Danielle on our team, structural engineer, have spent hours and hours internally looking at it to make it as, as minimally disruptive as we can, but from a pure what you need to build and the time frame you need to build it, construction-wise, it's been vetted, and that's, unfortunately, the disruption's still there.
I have a question. My name is Heidi Florio. My daughter is the captain of the girls' game team. Just looking at your schematic, I'm not sure what's on the other end of that track. Is that wetlands? You can't build? Could we flip it? Could you bring the track, on the opposite end of the track to the end and maybe make that an option? I don't know. That's not where your conduits are and all your base operations. I don't know if that's a big enough space to put 6 tennis courts. I'm just looking at a schematic. I know it's much more detailed than that. I just was wondering.
Yeah, so there is a wetland area and a buffer zone in the back there, so we would be, I think, too tight to be able to fit 6 tennis courts for sure in that area. Yeah, it's not buildable back there. We just have some accessory track spaces.
So it's a line.
You're not going to have access to that area because that's part of the construction staging, and there does have to be some staging area to support the construction. Right,
I guess one question is possibly looking at the space right in front of the main stadium, where a fence could be moved and 2 tennis courts could possibly be put right in there, be off the parking lot issue. So, I just think there's probably somewhere we can find, 9,000 square feet for a temporary 2 tennis courts, which would cost almost nothing, put down asphalt and a temporary fence to maybe allow some enjoyment for the town residents other than being 18 months of almost nothing.
When you talk temporary courts, you're talking for practice, because you wouldn't be able to hold competitions.
At least to give the kids a chance to practice, 5 days a week, or minus maybe away meets and whatnot, because you can't have real home meets. You can have sort of staggered home meets, but it has to be a difficult thing to have all your home meets like you normally have on your calendar. Right, 2 temporary courts that would just be asphalt at the same time as the parking lot's going in front, and maybe That'd be just practice courts, they wouldn't be.
I mean, I think they would have to be just practice courts. I don't know that we'd be able to host competitions.
At least the kids would be on campus for most of their enjoyment if we had a simple, small space. I guess that's a question that if we don't have that answer, which we could get, we'd love to have that answer.
Sure.
And just speaking with our builders, because we have them here, temporary courts, about $100,000.
I'm thinking real simple, tent fences, asphalt, just you lay the asphalt. The ground over there is essentially perfect line. If there's no conduits and whatnot, right next to the track, you open up that fence. So I'm saying that'd be a very, very low budget solution, possibly for 2 practice courts with almost no fencing issues.
So hi, Tom Christensen, I'm the town manager. So like everybody's explaining, and I realize that there's a little discussion happening. However, discussion has been going on this site obviously for years, but more specifically since Fontaine has been on board. I think like Gordon said, or Dory, they've already sort of made all the concessions that they can make. We've done our best to not impact anyone any more than we can. So now it's on Gordon and myself to figure out how to have the 25 season. The 24 season's good. We just need to figure that out. And like Gordon said, that plan is in the works. Nothing that you're mentioning probably hasn't been mentioned by someone at some point. We've gone through all the iterations. We've checked every spot. We've done all they can to save everything they can and impact as few sports as possible. This is it. So now we have to just look forward to how do we play all the sports as everybody gets moved phase by phase. And all of those plans aren't done yet. But putting something on this site, slowing down construction, spending more money, it can't change from this. This is the budget, this is the schedule, this is where we're at.
I don't think there was any discussion on tennis. I mean, no one actually heard that. No one that was intimately involved was involved with that. Those discussions over the last 8-10 months or whatnot in terms of
Okay.
What would you need? How would you do it?
Well, I think
anyone here was involved.
Okay. Well, I think we tried our best to reach out to the public as much as possible this whole entire process. They've obviously changed their design to save courts for a specific amount of time, the best they could. I guess what I'm saying is we have a new high school being built, and there's an implication there and some disruption. And we just have to sort of keep our eye on the prize, which is the pot of gold at the end of the rainbow, right? This is what's going to get us the school on budget and on time. We'll just have to figure out, Gordon and I, how to do 25. And then that's it.
My last question is, around those 3 tennis courts, is there any other space there? That space could be reconfigured for a very low number of dollars if you add a little space to those 3 tennis courts. You might be able to get a 4th tennis court with almost nothing else being affected. But that's, and they're saying, I didn't hear any of these things.
Talking here? Next to the courts, is that what you're saying?
Next to you're keeping the 3 front courts closest to the parking lot?
That's inside the word.
Yeah, so the reason that becomes part of the construction site is because the utilities that service the new building run through there, there's water through there. So that's going to be dug up and excavated in relatively short order once we start. We are in that area trying to keep it, as it's configured for as long as possible. Just like with the courts, there's considerations on all sides. So, we're accommodating the summer concert series in that area until the end of this series. We're working on, how the fireworks will be. So all those considerations are there. But as far as that area being able to be used in that 25 season, again, if you think about it, that's about a year before the whole building's got to open, so all those utilities would have to be in by then. And, you know, in terms of being able to move or relocate utilities, obviously they're coming from the street, they're going through to that area, they can't go through the football field, they can't go through the other 3 courts, so there's really no other corridor to get them back to the existing site.
I just want to ask a question, because most of the districts that we work with actually only have 4 courts. So I want to understand, I'm just curious, I'm not offering a solution at the moment, but it's good to have more information. But you were asking for an additional court. Would a 4th court make any difference to the sequencing of the way your tournaments happen, or is 3 just impossible?
It's temporary court, I don't know if you'd be able to
Right.
host matches. I think
Yeah.
Well, some schools have 4 and you have to play
Rotate.
matches an
And-
hour and a half later and you have a much longer.
Right, so and 3 is not possible to,
3 is a very tricky one. I
It
mean,
is.
4 is a big difference. That's
that's great, just curious to understand that.
a Massachusetts school matches 5 courts.
Uh-huh.
So 4 is pretty close to 5 compared to 3. So it does help the kids a lot of something happening when there's a temporary space there. At least for,
Just curious to
I think
understand.
more of the matches next spring all have to be away anyways. They're all traveling for their 15 to 17 away days anyways. But it's having practice sessions for the kids to enjoy some of their day-to-day activities. What a 4th court.
So
Helps a lot.
the big ask is a 4th court and ideally some temporary practice courts, if there's any way to create any hardscape with those. Yeah, well, I'm just trying to understand.
Well, it could be depending on what the town concert area is, how that would be utilized, if that could be utilized for seating for concerts anyways. But I didn't know what next to the courts was not going to be touched for. Whether a temporary court in there would make it a lot easier for these students to have to leave campus every day, fight for courts at weird times during dinner and study hours. This community doesn't have unlimited courts for other communities just to come over for 90 days. It's not that simple, because I've been in tennis for a long time. But any temporary courts would be great for these guys day to day. So, I think that's a great question to get an answer on.
Hi, Elizabeth O'Neill. I have 4 kids who have gone to East Long Meadow, 2 have graduated, 2 are still here. Unfortunately, my youngest will graduate in 2026, so gosh, timing, you know. But my question is, obviously, you're working hard, and I respect that in terms of trying to keep as many courts active for not just the students, but residents. Remember, we are the taxpayers paying for this. And my question is, from what I'm hearing tonight, there is going to be excuse my French, a shitstorm going all around those courts with construction. How good is the air quality going to be for people to be out on those courts playing with all of that construction?
Yeah, so it's a good question, and it's a consideration. Again, probably 80% of what we do across the state is schools, public schools, private schools, interacting with those types of issues. So as far as air quality, the biggest kind of disruption during construction that you'll see is going to be dust, right? Like obviously we're going to be removing the grass to stabilize the dirt. We're going to be digging. We're going to be pouring footings and backfilling. So that will kind of, ebb and flow with different stages of construction, but that's controlled with, wetting the site with water, tackifying areas, planting temporary grass to keep the dust down. Another thing that, we always try and do on our projects is basically, pave the areas that are going to be paved, even if it's with temporary, like as quickly as possible, which helps control water, controls dust. Another thing that will be a benefit is that the work hours of construction, right, when we would be, creating, the excavations and unearthing stuff are 7 to 3:30. routinely. So it's, kind of mirrors school hours and, is not going to be interacting with them on nights and most weekends. So it's definitely a consideration. It's something that, we take into account with when we buy out our site subcontractor. They own a water truck on site. Mark is very diligent on making sure they do that. So definitely something that we consider and keep the dust down. As, you said, there's going to be disruptions. There's going to be, equipment on site during construction. But it's something that we manage daily.
I have another question. You guys said you're taking the horseshoe, correct? And you're going to be putting down asphalt, correct? In that area, in the front?
Yeah, there are, since when this was updated, Dory can speak to it exactly, but there are some trees I know that want to remain in the final configuration.
If we could just fence that area off for temporary courts at the end of the school day. You guys are done at 3:30. We fence off, you're going to be doing construction anyway, you fence off the area and use it for tennis practice. Is that an option? I don't know. I'm just throwing it out there. But if there's trees there, that's not going to work.
There's also a grade too.
Yeah. It is a very sloping area, so
Okay, I don't know what the grade is or anything.
Yeah, that's the reason why that area seems least likely to me, because it's quite a hill. I think you probably just unconsciously have forgotten it. But notice on your way out that area, the rest of the older parking lot is more flat than that area. And that area, just to be clear, this is a diagram, but there's actually a significant amount of tree area that we're protecting in that. To recreate and protect some of the historic features and trees that the school already is used to. But nonetheless, mainly I think the slope would make it not ideal for tennis, but, certainly look at it. At the end of the parking lot. Right, no, you're right, absolutely. You temporary parking? Yeah. Temporary cleanup of paving. Yeah, I think that's something that, you're just talking about kind of creating a practice area, essentially, yeah. Right, exactly. That is the flattest zone, so that is something that I think the team should look at.
Magic money drops out of the sky somehow.
Yeah, all I can say is if you've watched us work, I swear, make every effort to be as attentive and considerate. We listen to faculty, and you'll find doubters in the faculty who now believe that we listen. We definitely listen. I don't want to do any disservice to anyone by making any false promises, but I think, Fontaine are amazing. We're working with them on a project where they've gone above board, to really help residents and neighbors near a project out. So I think we're all being careful here to not overstate anything, but it's helpful to hear the concerns so we can look at it.
I know they'll make most of the budget, and I'm just curious, so like relative cost, the building. I don't want to get you yelled at. So we're adding like parking and we're adding a road for the neighbors to alleviate traffic for the trucks and things like that, right? To keep, I guess, a good order and be a good neighbor. How much is that road costing relative to the rest of the project? Yeah.
No, Norton is already there.
Right, but
She's got other separate us from the construction from the public. So.
Yeah, so Norton's already here, and we're going to cut off Norton to all the traffic, except for the trash and the deliveries that already come to the school until the final school is built, and we close it off for good forever. The temporary road is coming in where the existing horseshoe entrance is. That's going to be the new construction entrance. Going to come right down where it is, and then it's going to take a right over behind the Calabrese's house and all the way down the field, around, and then back to the construction site. So that will be the temporary road that we built for the construction. I don't know.
We're still looking at the budget on that. But the reason we're doing that is for the separation, right? That's safety of the students and the town. If you don't do some type of separation, whether it's part of the part of the budget anyway, every project we do, we need to separate. Because when the trucks come in, the steel trucks, we'll have hundreds of concrete trucks, That separation part, we're still working on the budget part, the cost on that, but the separation of that is how we have to design this, just to keep everybody safe.
I'm assuming something temporary like that is gonna be pretty expensive, so like $100,000, for a couple temporary courts. I'm just thinking in relative terms of the kids' well-being. I know we've already talked about that on the website. Your focus is on the health and well-being of the kids you're designing. You have a thoughtful design. That's awesome. So we want to support cost, find money, and Jordan and helping guide everybody. Guide us on something. Mike's got a great idea of temporary courses. That and the parking lot where nobody parks is flat enough. I don't know the rating there, but I know it's pretty flat. That was perfect.
Hey, Tom, I have a question for you. Did the town consider looking at alternate sites in town, other school property, to build the 6 courts permanently? Did we consider that?
No, we never did.
No. Why was that?
No, I was just saying, we want the courts here. Our tennis program is here. We don't want to locate it somewhere else, just like we wouldn't want the pool off campus.
It's ideal, like Amherst as an example.
Yeah.
Amherst Middle School is where the tennis is played. So it's a reasonable solution for some towns. I'm just wondering, once again, we need 6 courts. That's the one on the day.
Our hope is to bring everything back, just like what Dory was talking about with softball. We want that back on campus. We want our courts on campus. We want to keep the pool here. This is,
I
yeah.
see that too. I have a question for the Fontaine folks. What did you say the estimated cost was to build a tennis court, permanent, one that can be played on for matches?
For the 6 courts?
No, just a court. How much is a court?
I don't want to misspeak.
Okay,
So I really can't answer that.
For the town, it may be possible that the cost of busing the kids around or renting temporary space and the liability insurance, all the other things associated with that will be a cost of X. Whereas we might be able to go to one of the elementary schools and build 3 tennis courts for that cost. That could be a possibility. Is that accurate or you don't know? Is that a possibility?
Yes, you mean?
I'm just wondering. I don't know.
The funds to build another tennis court in town somewhere else don't currently exist. We'd have to allocate them somewhere, I guess would be the answer to that question.
But are the funds appropriated to bus the kids? Have we allocated those?
That would be within our operating budget, we're gonna have to make it work. It's not gonna be anywhere near
That's what I wanted.
the 100,000, I think, yeah. Fair? Yeah.
Hi, Carrie Jarzewski. I'm sorry to change the tide away from tennis. And this may exist somewhere, but I'd be very interested in just seeing like a document that says the things that you're taking into consideration to mitigate the impact for the students who will be in the building, why this is going on, noise, dust, other athletes, all those kinds of things. My second question is, I'm very interested in special education and supporting accessibility, and particularly thinking about historically marginalized populations. So I don't know if there's an accessibility document that you have created with this building and the different things that you're taking into consideration. I have been on other university campuses where I've worked with construction, and we often will find that we haven't included the right people in the conversations, and so you'll have someone in a wheelchair that gets stuck in between 2 doors, and things don't open certain ways. So I'm just, curious as to the work that we're doing there, gender-inclusive bathrooms, those kinds of things. Thank you.
She was plant. So yeah, we certainly do. We can direct you to a couple of documents. One is the educational program. So every MSBA project starts with the district writing a full rehaul, really, essentially, of what they need to be doing with their school that directly engages inclusivity and talks about all of the special education programs. And again, one of the benefits of this project for this school is it actually will more appropriately address the needs of students with special needs. So we go through extensive rounds of that, so I can share that document with you. That document and the plans have to be carefully vetted by DESE, who are looking specifically at that, and that they have to approve the plan even before the MSBA does in terms of its educational outcomes. In terms of accessibility as a whole, we have a consultant who reviews the plans from an accessibility standpoint. very closely. And the discussions with the school building committee definitely focus on this issue of inclusivity. And it's been actually a priority from the very beginning of this project to make East Long Meadow a school, or hope to create a school that is embracing of all students, no matter what their interests and needs and focus is, and to try and talk a lot about building community. So that actually was a hallmark of our initial design concepts, to think about how can we actually make sure that students don't feel that they have to kind of go to a corner of the school to find a place that's good for them. How can we put more student work, student art on display, and really celebrate all facets of student life. And then in terms of gender-inclusive bathrooms, that actually has been a very significant topic of discussion. And you can't probably see it in the detail here, but I can actually direct you to the PowerPoints where we presented the different options and really heard from the school building committee, and actually reviewed those options with students as well. But we actually do have within each academic wing a very unique setting condition for bathrooms, where instead of a boys' bathroom, a girls' bathroom of multiple fixtures, you'll actually have essentially 5 separate bathrooms, individual rooms. So, and all students go into that area, into a room that has sink, toilet, and a door, so it's a complete room. And that's actually connected to a large wall, and it's between the classroom hallways. So it's what this district felt most comfortable with as an approach. We presented many different options and really discussed them. And again, the discussion was always, from the part of the school building committee, very much focused on how to make students, how to enable all students to feel welcome and respected. And also how to address what are challenges with discipline in general in schools, in bathroom environments. So I think we've done pretty well, but we open to your review. If you want to take a look at the plan closely, we can walk through and take a look at it, but we do have consultants that look at it as well.
Thanks. On the construction side of the question, in terms of minimizing disruption and stuff like that, that's obviously something that we're very aware of. We're in all kinds of Massachusetts public schools. So it's, starts with planning, obviously an experienced team, and even what you saw with the way we're kind of segregating the access between the construction site and the school while allowing the school to operate as normally as possible. It kind of begins with how we set up the logistics. In terms of things that we can do during construction to minimize disruption, you'll see when the fence goes up, it's planned to be right now an 8-foot fence with a dark scrim on it, so that it not only helps to, eliminate dust traveling from the construction site to the school side, but also, creates a visual barrier where, when kids are on the ground level looking over, we're not distracting them with what we're doing. One side note is that we do like to get involved with, the school and the programs in terms of, providing tours on the site if people are interested, working with the engineering classes on people being interested in construction. But day to day, we don't want people to be distracted. We'll also do things to help, kind of think about air quality in the school, put filters on the returns, so that, stuff that's being brought into the building will be filtered before it comes into the building. And then we'll coordinate with Frank and his team on things like test dates, making sure that we're minimizing noise and disruption. We also have what we call blackout hours, where during the pickup and drop-off times, our gate for construction is closed. There's no one construction-wise or deliveries that's entering or leaving the site, so that we don't add to traffic and disruption. So a lot of things that we do on, these projects all across the state to be as minimally disruptive as possible, and also being communicative, so that people know, what to expect. There's obviously noise, there's dust that's associated with building the building, and we'll work with the school staff, so the parents and teachers, there'll probably be a website where people can access what's going to be upcoming for activities, so they know not only what's coming and what will be associated with it, but also how long it'll last. Because we find that, when you have rollers working for site work, it's going to have to happen for a certain amount of time, but when people know, there's another week of this activity and then we're on to the next thing, that helps too. So we try and be partners during construction, but also use what we've learned building all these schools to minimize that.
Anybody else? Okay, we're super.
Thank you for being here, actually, and answering our questions.
I just have one about the utilities running through the tennis court area. Instead of the other options with temporary tennis courts, could we do something where somewhere along this spring or into the summer, after school gets out, changing the schedule so that the utilities through the tennis courts are rerouted? So instead of building temporary tennis courts, this is left here so that you can build these perhaps in the fall or between other critical path, operations that you need to do. So we'd probably take a slice of the parking lot at the end that nobody uses anyway, and then that might open up the possibility of building the tennis courts, in the fall into next spring before the tennis season starts. And that wouldn't incur any extra cost, I wouldn't think, but it would change your schedule. The benefit might be to you is you could take out those last 3 courts and maybe give you some extra access. Thank you.
Yes, so with that idea, it's something that we've looked into deeply, because obviously we've been aware of this concern, like from, when we were selected. So it's something that I would love to tell you the answer is yes. Like, I would love nothing more than to do that, get those built and have them online, because not only would you then have potentially more courts for some time if we could leave with 3, but they'd also be the new courts, and we'd love to be able to do that. The reality, unfortunately, with the way that the procurement and construction, dealing with those utility companies, you've all dealt with them on your own projects or personal, is that the timeline to get someone out here, say this summer, even this fall, to do that, because remember it interacts with the existing parking lot, is we don't believe possible at this time. We will continue pushing on that, but as you recall, going back to, the process can only proceed right at a certain pace, and until November when the vote passed, obviously all those conversations wouldn't even be realistic with the utility companies, and then the selection process for the construction manager went rapidly. Skanska did a great job with getting on board, so we're moving very quickly, and we'll be out here in a matter of months to start it and move forward. But there's mass public procurement laws that dictate how things need to be purchased and when those contracts can be assigned, and the designers who again got to a certain stage but then can't proceed to the next stage until the vote passed need to design the documents that we can bid out, because it needs to be 100% designed for the contractors. So I hate saying it, because really we understand the problem, we understand the town, we care deeply about it. And we'd love to be able to do it, but the timing on that we've looked into with the whole team, even if you could get it started now, right, it still wouldn't allow for that spring of 25.
If I might just change the sport for a moment, this may seem trivial compared to the issue with the tennis court, but do the varsity softball and varsity baseball outfields have fence? Yeah, the top 2. Okay. And I know Mr. Hogan will get a kick out of this, but are the dimensions of the varsity baseball field high school approved or not? Do we know that? Okay. For those of you who don't have a son or daughter playing softball, or a son playing baseball, or a grandson, in order for the current fence to be, for that varsity field, the kids put that fence up and then they take it down. The town doesn't do that. The baseball team does. And one more question. For those outside fields, scoreboard? Yep. Okay, thanks.
Paul, you still in? Still in?
I just have a,
Good enough. Okay.
I just have a comment, really. I just want to say I really thank you guys for all your work, but also for taking a little more time to think about maybe some of the things we brought up. I really appreciate that. And even if you can't do anything, I appreciate you just thinking. Somebody from the town said, this is it, this is final, we're done. Something to that effect. And I don't really appreciate that completely. I appreciate an open mind, because these kids went through a lot with COVID, as we all did. And I work with little kids in the social emotional part, and the fallout is still going. I think we've all moved on and we forget that, but not just the little kids, these guys, my kids were in middle school in their bedroom for over a year, you know, and sorry, it makes me a little bit emotional because it's emotional, and they weren't in their school at all. And now they finally are back, and we're doing this, and that's great. Like, I mean, it's awesome. We all voted for it, voted for the pool, voted for everything. So anything you can do to kind of relook, like the fourth court, anything that can help. You know, if you can't, I understand, but I just want to point that out, that these kids went through a lot at Kids Pass. I never went through, you guys never went through, and, you know, just appreciate your time. Thank you.
So to follow up on her comment, I think everyone here, we all understand that you guys have done everything you can, and I'm gathering that the answer is no, that you can't do anything about it, and the plans are already kind of like on the way to tear down courts, and it's only gonna be one season, but, you know, for the seniors, that one season next year, that's their season. And a lot of kids, my own probably, if they don't have a place to practice in town, I'm not sure they're gonna continue tennis here in East Long Meadow. Speaking for the kids here, they just want a place to practice. That's why we're here.
This is a letter.
Yeah, can
Yep.
you speak up?
This is a letter from a mother who couldn't be here tonight because she's teaching CCD, so I'm reading it on her behalf. To the building committee, if the construction of the tennis courts cannot be completed prior to March 2025.
Excuse me, can you speak up?
Not on. My son will not be able to play on the tennis team. He has played on the tennis team freshman year and is currently playing his sophomore year. He will not be able to get a ride to a new location for practice. He walks daily to and from the school, including practices. Additionally, his interest and skill developed from the wonderful summer program the town via the Enfield Tennis Club hosted at the East Long Meadow tennis courts. These courts are used both day and evening by East Long Meadow residents all summer long. Thank you for your consideration of this matter, Julie Serafini.
That's good. Okay, we certainly appreciate your input. We will continue to have discussions. We've had some already, and we'll continue to talk about things. So appreciate all of you coming tonight, bringing forth your opinions in this discussion. We are so excited to be building this project. This town is excited, I hope. And we'll see you when we start digging. Thank you all for coming out tonight. Appreciate it.